When I first bought my lakefront property, I thought I'd finally found peace. A quiet place where I could unwind, go fishing at dawn, and maybe take my yacht out for a spin on weekends. The neighborhood looked perfect. Big trees, calm waters, and a so-called exclusive community run by the Lakeview Homeowners Association. I thought exclusive meant private and peaceful. I didn't realize it actually meant controlled by power-hungry busybodies who have nothing better to do. From the very first week, I knew something was off. The HOA president, a woman named Karen of course, showed up on my dock while I was waxing the side of my yacht. She was wearing a wide-brimmed hat, big sunglasses, and carried a clipboard like it was a badge of honor. She started off fake friendly. "Welcome to Lakeview Shores," she said with that tight smile people use when they're sizing you up. "Beautiful yacht you've got there. How long are you planning to keep it docked?" I looked up at her and smiled. "Well, seeing as it's my dock, I'd say indefinitely." Her smile twitched. "Ah, I see. It's just, some residents have voiced concerns about large watercraft affecting the neighborhood's aesthetic." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean they don't like looking at my boat?" She laughed nervously. "Not exactly, but we do have guidelines. The HOA prefers smaller watercraft, kayaks, canoes, things that blend in." That's when I realized, this wasn't about guidelines. This was about control. And Karen was the type who needed to feel in charge of everyone and everything around her. I decided to play it polite at least for the moment. "I'll take a look at the guidelines," I said. "But my yacht isn't going anywhere." She didn't like that answer. I could see it in her face. That was the first time she gave me that classic Karen stare, the one that silently says you'll regret defying me. She walked off without another word, heels clicking against the dock, muttering something under her breath about property values. A week later I got my first fine notice. Apparently my yacht violated community standards because it was too large and visually disruptive. The fine. $500. I laughed when I opened the letter. $500 for owning a boat? I ignored it. Then came another fine. And another. Each one bigger than the last. They accused me of failure to comply, disregard for HOA authority, and disruption of community harmony. I'm not kidding, that was the actual wording. By the end of the month, they said I owed nearly $5,000 in HOA penalties. That's when I stopped laughing. I called the HOA office and guess who picked up? Karen herself. Her voice was smug. "Oh, I was just about to call you," she said. "We need to resolve this issue before it escalates." "Escalates?" I asked. "Karen, you're fining me because my boat offends you." She sighed like a teacher explaining something to a slow student. "It's not about me. It's about maintaining community standards. We all signed the same agreement when we moved here. Except the part about yachts," I said. "Funny because I read every line of that agreement. Nowhere does it say I can't have one." She paused for a moment, then changed tone. "Well, it's implied." I laughed out loud. "You can't fine people for implied rules, Karen." Her voice hardened. "You'll find the HOA takes compliance very seriously." I hung up right there. I wasn't going to waste breath on a dictator in designer sunglasses. But Karen didn't stop. She started sending letters to my mail, emails, even text messages from blocked numbers. She organized community meetings, where she encouraged neighbors to complain about unsightly docks and obnoxious displays of wealth. Basically, she was turning the entire neighborhood against me for daring to own something nicer than her little pontoon boat. Things escalated fast. One morning I found an official-looking paper taped to my front door. It claimed the HOA had the right to temporarily seize property in violation of community standards. It wasn't signed by a lawyer, it wasn't notarized, and it wasn't legal. But it was enough to make me furious. That's when I decided I wasn't going to play defense anymore. I was going to fight back. I called my real attorney, a guy named Michael who specialized in property law and had handled dozens of HOA disputes. When I explained the situation, he just chuckled. "They're bluffing," he said. "They can't legally fine you for something that's not in their bylaws. Let me take a look." A few days later, he called back with a tone that told me things were about to get interesting. "So here's the thing," he said. "They've been charging people for all sorts of violations that aren't actually in the agreement. Unauthorized fines, illegal dues, it's a mess. If you wanted to, we could file a formal complaint with the county." "How bad would that hurt them?" I asked. "Oh, it would sting," he said. "But if you really want to make them sweat, I've got another idea. You said your property is right on the lake, right?" "Right." "And your deed goes into the water line?" I opened my folder of property documents. "Yeah, it does. About 20 feet into the lake." He paused for a beat, then laughed. Then you're going to love this. Technically, part of the lake is yours. That sentence lit a fire in me. You're saying I own part of the lake? Yep. And get this, the HOA doesn't actually own the water rights. They lease them from the county. Meaning that if someone else were to acquire the lease? He let his voice trail off. I grinned. You're saying I could buy the lake? He laughed again. You didn't hear that from me. But yes, in theory you could. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat on my porch, staring out over the dark water, the lights from my yacht reflecting on the ripples. Karen thought she could find me into submission. She thought she could bully me because she had a title and a clipboard. But she didn't know who she was dealing with. If there's one thing I've learned in life, it's that when someone tries to push you into a corner, you don't push back, you take away the whole wall. The next morning, I drove straight to the county office. I spent hours going through old maps, water rights leases, and public records. It turned out Michael was right. The HOA didn't own the lake. They leased it from the county under a 10-year agreement that was about to expire in less than 6 months. The county was preparing to put the rights up for renewal, to the highest bidder. It felt like destiny. Over the next few weeks, I quietly gathered the funds. I met with the county officials, submitted a proposal, and made sure my paperwork was airtight. No one in the HOA had any idea what I was doing. They were too busy sending me new fines for inadequate landscaping and failure to participate in mandatory HOA events. I played along, pretending to be frustrated and defeated. Karen bragged to her little clique about how she was finally putting the yacht guy in his place. Then came the day of the renewal auction. The HOA sent Karen to represent them, smug as ever, ready to renew the lease like it was a done deal. She walked in wearing a bright pink blazer and a matching purse, acting like she owned the whole building. But she didn't expect to see me sitting in the front row, right across from her. She frowned when she saw me. "What are you doing here?" I smiled. "Oh, just interested in local property matters." She didn't like that. She whispered something to her assistant and kept throwing me dirty looks during the proceedings. Then the bidding started. The HOA opened with their usual bid, the same amount they'd been paying for years. Then I raised my hand. I doubled it. Karen's head snapped toward me. "Excuse me," she said. "He can't bid. He's not representing the HOA." The county official looked at her calmly. "This is a public bidding, ma'am. Anyone can participate." Karen's jaw clenched. She tried to outbid me, but I matched every increase. Every time she raised the amount, I went higher, calm, steady, unbothered. By the end, she was sweating, whispering to her assistant, "We can't go any higher." Then the official said the words I'd been waiting for, "Sold, to Mr. Daniels." The room went silent. Karen turned to me with a look that could melt steel. "You can't do this," she shouted. "That lake belongs to the HOA." I smiled. "Not anymore." That was the day everything changed. The HOA didn't realize it yet, but they'd just lost control of the entire lake, the one thing that made their neighborhood valuable. And once I got those papers signed, I knew exactly what I was going to do next. Because if they thought they could fine me for keeping my yacht on their lake, wait until they found out the lake, every inch of it, was now mine. When I walked out of that county office holding the official paperwork, I couldn't help but smile. The document was thick, stamped, and crystal clear. I now held full leasing rights to Lakeview Lake, every inch of it. The same lake the HOA had bullied people over for years. The same lake they used to fine me, threaten me, and harass my neighbors. Now it was mine. Legally, completely, and indisputably. I sat in my truck for a long moment looking at the papers. All those ridiculous letters, all those fines, all that smug arrogance from Karen, it was about to collapse like a house of cards. But I didn't rush to reveal it. No, I wanted them to feel safe first. I wanted them to think everything was normal, that their little kingdom was still intact. Because when you've got power, the most satisfying moment is watching someone realize they've already lost it. For the next week, I went about my days as usual. I took my yacht out for a spin every morning. I waved at neighbors. I even waved at Karen when she drove by in her shiny white SUV, glaring at me through her tinted window. She must have been wondering how I could still look so calm after being fined into oblivion. Then came the HOA's big summer event, their Lakeview Harmony celebration. Every year, they'd host a party by the lake with tents, banners, and speeches about community spirit. Which, in HOA language, meant patting themselves on the back for being control freaks. I decided to attend this year. Normally, I'd skip it, but this time I wanted front row seats. When I arrived, Karen was on stage with her usual fake cheerleader energy. "We're so proud to keep our community beautiful, organized, and fair for everyone," she declared through the microphone. And let's all remember to follow the lake rules, to keep our environment safe and enjoyable. People clapped, some out of politeness, others because they didn't want trouble. I stood near the back, sipping lemonade, trying not to laugh. She had no clue that every inch of water behind her now belonged to me. As the event wrapped up, Karen strutted over to me. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said, smiling that same tight smile. "I hope you've learned your lesson about respecting HOA policies." I tilted my head. "Oh, I've learned a lot, Karen. More than you think." She squinted at me suspiciously. "Good. Then you'll be happy to hear that we're scheduling another hearing next week regarding your unpaid fines." "Another one?" I asked. "You sure that's a good idea?" "Oh yes," she said confidently. "We'll be deciding whether to place a lien on your property. You'll either comply or face foreclosure." I smiled slowly. "You really don't want to do that?" Her expression turned sharp. "Excuse me?" I just chuckled and said, "You'll see soon enough." Then I walked off, leaving her fuming behind me. That night I got to work. With the help of my attorney, I had official letters drafted, signed, and sealed. They were addressed to every HOA board member, to every household in the community, and especially to Karen. The letter explained, in calm, professional, devastating detail, that as of that date, the legal leaseholder and managing owner of Lakeview Lake was me. It also included a very important clause. Access to the lake, docks, or any watercraft usage now required written permission from the owner. Meaning, if you wanted to swim, fish, dock your kayak, or even dip a toe in the water, you had to go through me. I sent the letters through certified mail. And then I waited. 3 days later, the explosion began. It started with my phone ringing nonstop. Neighbors, confused and panicked, calling to ask what the letters meant. Some were polite, others were angry. One guy said, "Hey, is this a joke? Karen says you're trying to take over the lake." I calmly replied, "Not trying. I already did." Then came the HOA emergency meeting. Oh, you better believe I attended. When I walked into that room, the air was thick with tension. Karen sat at the head of the table, surrounded by her board members. She looked furious, clutching a copy of my letter. "Mr. Daniels," she said through clenched teeth, "care to explain this nonsense?" I smiled, setting down a folder. "It's not nonsense. It's a legal transfer of rights. The county confirmed it. I own the lake now." She slammed the letter onto the table. "You can't own a lake. That's public property." "Actually," I said, sliding over my copy of the lease, "it's a county-owned body of water under a private lease. You used to lease it. Now I do." The room went silent. Board members leaned forward, whispering among themselves. Karen snatched the document and scanned it, her eyes darting back and forth. Her face went pale. "This can't be real," she muttered. "Oh, it's very real," I said. "And since I now control lake access, that means your HOA regulations regarding the water are null and void. You can't fine anyone for boats, docks, or aesthetics. You don't have jurisdiction anymore." One of the board members, a middle-aged guy named Tom, looked up nervously. "Wait, so, you're saying the HOA can't use the lake?" "Not without my permission," I said simply. "And since the HOA has repeatedly harassed me, illegally fined me, and trespassed on my property, I've decided to restrict access. Effective immediately." Karen shot to her feet. "You can't ban the entire neighborhood from the lake. That's absurd." I stood up too. "So is fining someone $5,000 for owning a yacht, Karen? But here we are." She tried to argue, citing bylaws and old regulations, but my attorney sitting beside me cut her off. "Ma'am, the HOA's authority ends at the shoreline. My client's lease supersedes your internal rules. You no longer have standing over the water or its use." You could have heard a pin drop. Then came the shouting. Some residents were furious, not at me but at Karen. They realized she'd been overstepping for years, fining people illegally, making up rules, pretending the HOA had more power than it did. Others were stunned silent, realizing they no longer had access to the lake their homes were built around. Karen pointed at me like I was some villain in her melodrama. "You're destroying this community," she shouted. I just smiled. "No, Karen. I'm liberating it from you." After that meeting, chaos broke out. The next day, big red "No trespassing" signs appeared along the shoreline, all legally placed, backed by county records. I even installed cameras to monitor the docks. Within a week, the HOA's phone lines were blowing up with complaints from angry residents demanding refunds for lake access fees that no longer existed. The board started falling apart. Half of the members resigned, saying they didn't sign up for lawsuits and public humiliation. Meanwhile, Karen tried to fight back. She called the county, tried to file appeals, even attempted to spread rumors that I'd bribed officials to get the lease. None of it worked. The documents were airtight. Every move she made just made her look more desperate. The best part? I didn't stop there. With my attorney's help, I created a new set of rules for lake access. Ones that actually protected the property and prevented abuse. Residents could still use the lake, if they paid a membership fee. A small one really. But guess who didn't qualify? The HOA itself. Because the HOA had a history of harassment and unlawful activity against me, they were permanently banned. The irony was delicious. Karen's precious HOA meetings used to take place in the boathouse by the water. Now it was locked behind my security gate. She even tried sneaking onto the dock one morning, and I caught it on camera. When I confronted her, she went off, shouting about community rights and ownership of the people. I just laughed and pointed to the sign. Private property, I said. You set the standard for following the rules. Now you can live by them. For once, she had nothing to say. She just stood there, shaking with anger before storming off down the path. Weeks passed and the neighborhood changed completely. Without the lake, property values dropped. People stopped paying HOA dues. The once powerful board couldn't even afford to maintain the entrance sign. Meanwhile, I turned the lake into something better. I opened it for public use on weekends under my own management. Families from nearby towns came to fish, boat, and relax. I charged small fees that went directly into maintenance and cleanup. It was everything the HOA claimed to care about, but actually done right. Eventually, the county commended me for improving access and keeping the area safe. Local news even did a short feature on how a private citizen revitalized Lakeview Lake. You can imagine how much Karen hated seeing my face on TV, smiling and shaking hands with county officials. One of my neighbors, a kind older man named George, stopped by one day. "Son," he said, "you gave that woman exactly what she deserved. She's been bullying folks around here for years. You didn't just buy the lake. You bought your freedom." And he was right. I didn't buy it for the money or the control. I did it because sometimes the only way to deal with people who thrive on power is to take away the thing they hold over everyone else. Karen thought she could fine me into submission. She thought she could make me kneel to her authority. But now she had to drive by my gate every day, staring at the water she used to rule over, and knowing she'd never set foot in it again. Still, I had one more move to make, one final step to ensure the HOA could never rise again. And that was coming next. When I woke up the next morning, I didn't expect to see news vans parked near the lake. Apparently, word had spread fast. The lake ban had gone viral. Reporters were asking residents for interviews, filming the locked gates, the fresh private property, no trespassing signs, and the HOA president shouting at my security guard like a man possessed. I just stood on the deck of my yacht, coffee in hand, watching it all unfold like the final act of a movie I didn't plan but somehow directed. Karen, the HOA president, was pacing near the dock, waving her phone, yelling at someone. I could hear bits and pieces, "Legal action, this is theft, he can't do this." But she didn't realize the truth yet. Everything she said, every word of her rage, was being recorded. Not by me, but by the camera crew from a local news station who had been tipped off by one of the residents. The irony was beautiful. She tried to humiliate me with HOA fines, and now she was the one on camera, red-faced, screaming nonsense about community control. My lawyer, Daniel, called me just as I took another sip. He sounded calm, almost amused. "Ethan," he said, "just so you know, the HOA's emergency board meeting last night didn't go too well. They tried to sue, but once the county saw the title transfer and your legal ownership of the lake, they realized the HOA has zero jurisdiction over it." I laughed, shaking my head. "So you're telling me they fined me for not moving something I technically own the rights to park on?" Daniel chuckled. "Exactly. You didn't just win, Ethan. You rewrote the entire neighborhood map." By noon, the HOA board was standing outside the lake entrance, holding clipboards, arguing with the guards. The same guards Karen once called unnecessary. I could almost hear her voice echoing from a week ago. "Security gates make this place feel like a prison." Now she was the one begging to get in. My wife, Mia, walked up beside me, her sunglasses reflecting the sunlight off the water. "You know," she said with a smirk, "I didn't think you'd actually go through with buying the lake." I grinned. "You married a man of his word." She laughed, shaking her head. "You married a man of revenge." That afternoon, the official letter from the HOA arrived. One final desperate attempt. It read, The association hereby requests immediate restoration of lake access to all residents. Failure to comply will result in collective legal action. I read it out loud, laughing halfway through. Collective legal action, I repeated. They're going to sue me for owning my own property. But what really sealed the deal was what happened next. Around sunset, I received a call from a local real estate developer. He said he'd been following the news and wanted to make an offer, a partnership deal. Your private lake has gone viral, he said. There's talk online about exclusive memberships, private events, yacht clubs. You could turn this into a multi-million-dollar business. I didn't say yes right away. I just looked out at the lake, at my yacht resting peacefully in the water, and thought about how this all started with a $1,500 HOA fine. The next few days were chaos for the HOA. Half the residents turned against Karen. They blamed her for pushing too far, for waking up a man who wasn't afraid to fight back. I heard rumors that some were petitioning to dissolve the HOA entirely. I didn't interfere. They made their bed, now they had to lie in it. Karen, however, didn't go down quietly. She showed up one last time, storming through the gate, waving her hands. You can't block the community from the lake, she shouted from across the dock. I didn't even turn to face her at first. I just said, Karen, the moment you fine me for having my yacht on this water, you lost your right to call it community property. I own it now. You had every chance to back off. She kept yelling, but this time nobody backed her up. Her own board members were silent, ashamed, defeated. One of them even apologized to me quietly before leaving. Karen's voice cracked and she stormed off, muttering something about calling her lawyer. But everyone knew it was over. That night, I sat on the yacht with Mia, the calm water reflecting the orange glow of the setting sun. You know, she said softly, this whole thing, it's kind of poetic. I smiled. How so? She leaned back, smiling. They fined you for refusing to move your yacht, and now they have to move their lives around your lake. I laughed. Guess I became the HOA's worst nightmare. Weeks passed and the story kept spreading. A few YouTubers even made videos about the man who bought the lake to spite his HOA. The comments were filled with people cheering me on, calling me a legend. I wasn't trying to be one, but it felt good to finally have peace. No more fines, no more threats, no more Karen knocking on my door with a smug smile. I turned the lake into a private retreat, open only to those who respected it. Some of my old neighbors who had supported me got special passes. They were good people caught in the crossfire. As for the rest, well, the no trespassing signs spoke for themselves. Eventually, Karen resigned from the HOA. The pressure, the embarrassment, and the lawsuits from angry residents had taken their toll. The neighborhood quieted down after that. No more letters, no more harassment, just peace. Sometimes I'd see her driving by, glaring at the lake, and I'd wave. She never waved back. One evening, a letter arrived from the county again. This time it wasn't a fine. It was an invitation. The city wanted to recognize me for resolving a prolonged community dispute through legal and peaceful means. I couldn't help but laugh. I went from being the HOA's enemy to the county's example citizen. Life really does come full circle. Standing on my yacht deck, I took one last look at the lake. The water shimmered, the lights from the nearby hills reflected perfectly. I thought about the beginning, that one stupid fine, that one moment of arrogance, and how it led me here. The HOA wanted me gone. Instead, I became the owner of the very thing they tried to take. So yeah, when people say revenge isn't worth it, I just smile. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't loud or violent. It's calm, legal, and permanent. And if you ever find yourself dealing with a power-hungry HOA, just remember my story. Because the next time they fine you for your boat, your yard, or your mailbox color, just ask yourself one question. What would happen if I bought the lake? If you like this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more.